Hello, friends. It's Binge O'Clock, the podcast where we watch something and then we talk about it. I'm Joy Selden, and I've seen almost everything.
I'm Danielle and Joy, and I've seen almost nothing.
And welcome to our movie night.
Yay!
Tonight we watched Your Name, which is an anime that I had not seen, and Danielle absolutely loves. So is this the first
Surprise!
thing that it's like, hey,
This movie night is brought to you by Danielle, who is obsessed with this movie.
I mean, it's a very good movie.
Wait. This is where we do the thing.
Yes, okay, so this is where we do our spoiler alert, where we have to tell you, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. We highly recommend you download it, keep it on your device, and watch the film.
Yes, please. Because like I said, am obsessed with this movie. I told Joy she has to watch it, but I told her literally nothing about it.
Absolutely nothing.
Having her sit down and watch it, and I really do think that is the better viewing experience.
I mean, knowing nothing about it, the twists and turns really felt twisty and turny for me. And as somebody who watches something in a very sort of straightforward way, where I don't really look for, like I expect, like if I go to see an M. Night Shyamalan movie, I'm like, sure, there's going to be a twist that's going to happen, but like I'm not looking for it. And so not looking for it was especially great for this one.
Yes.
And that's it. That's as spoiler free as we're going to get.
Yep. You're going to want so this is it. The final warning. If you haven't seen this movie, please pause and then come back to us. We'll be so happy to see you.
Do what you gotta do. Now, we assume you've seen it, so now we will talk about it freely.
Have you?
But wasn't it pretty?
Okay, because I was going to say, this movie is so good that if you were accidentally spoiled for the twist, you would probably still enjoy the movie.
That is probably true. But yes.
Okay, Joy. Now we can talk about the movie. Shall we summarize it in one sentence? Precisely one sentence.
Okay, so I think I can do this.
Yes,
so,
I believe in you.
Two people find a way to inhabit each other's lives across time and space, and in doing so, change time.
It is a time travel love story. And it's just...
Danielle is already getting teary-eyed just talking about it. She loves this movie so much.
The first time I saw it was in theaters. I also did not know what to expect. I think I had seen the... I knew almost nothing about it. Walking in, I think maybe I had seen the trailer. I don't even know what tipped me off to this movie. But I walked into the theaters not knowing what to expect and was bawling 40 minutes in. I mean, absolutely bawling.
Well, yes. Because this is the other thing about this movie. So you expect a twist to happen because the way it starts is this very sort of complicated. You don't really get a lot of the time jumps initially, but you definitely get a sense of they're inhabiting each other's bodies.
Yes.
When they are, like, they'll fall asleep themselves and then they'll wake up as this other person. It's a man and a woman, and their lives are very different.
And when they wake up, they don't have the memories of the other person in their body, right? So when Mitsuha, that's the girl, wakes up, she doesn't remember what Taki did in her body yesterday.
Nope.
Which, of course, plays into the comedy of the movie. But I love how the beginning is exactly as disjointed and disorienting as that would probably be, because even as a viewer, you're just like, wait, what is the order of events here? Also, why is Taki's face bruised? They actually never explain that. The very first time.
Yeah, the very first time we meet him, he has a bandage on his face. And
yes,
I think
it's Mitsuha who's in him, but yeah.
Yes. But the only time we get like a brief glimpse of that is when the hostess, I'm so bad at her name. I might just call her Mrs. O. Yeah. Miss Okadera is like, she says something about like, and your temper, and like points at it, implying that he probably got into a fight or something. And knowing how off the wall he is when he's Mitsuha, that makes sense. Like, we so rarely get to see Taki in Taki's body. I feel like we followed Mitsuha a lot more, which is funny because like that feels, I mean, I'm sure by the end of it, it ends up being evenly split, but like, we get so much about Mitsuha's life.
Yes, well, I love that about the movie because when it's Mitsuha in Mitsuha's body, it is about Mitsuha's town and Mitsuha's life, right?
Right.
It's about her family and the rituals that they perform together and the traditions that her grandmother has passed to her and how important her town is, even though she kind of hates her life and her kind of having to deal with all of that. And yearns for Tokyo. But whenever it's Taki and Taki's body, it's actually about Mitsuha. Like, it's not about him. We know almost nothing about him except that he has a distant father, I guess. He likes to draw and he wants to be an architect. These are the three things we know about Taki.
I do think this actually speaks culturally to Japan because I think there is this big, heavy root of Japanese culture in the countryside, like the countryside or where the old ways are. And even it has seeped into the city, like it's seeped into every aspect of Japan. But like Tokyo and the bigger cities and even Kyoto are not as connected with their spiritual root as, like, I mean, 80% of the rest of the country.
Right. Or like as Mitsuha and her family would be, being that they live in Itomori, right?
Yes. And it's so like remote, and I love that he couldn't even find it based on the lake or whatever. And I'm just like, you went to a high school. Did you not see a name of a high school? Just totally gone. Like, this is what happens when you put the boy in charge.
Well, he wasn't paying any attention to any of that. He just wanted to, like, be really good at basketball all of a sudden and be really popular with everyone. And I mean everyone. Girls, boys, everyone. I love them. I mean, this movie's montages are just chef's kiss. Because first of all, the soundtrack is so good. But the montages where they fast forward through 3 months of events, but you get to experience all of them. So the body swap montage is the one that I'm discussing. Where they're going back and forth and he's like, you're more popular when I'm in your body.
No, I love that they both are like, don't mess with my relationships, while also not being able to stop themselves from messing with each other's relationships.
Teenagers.
I also, this is going to sound weird. There's something really darling about the fact that you had a dude drop into this girl's body and all he wants to do in the morning is play with her boobs. Is it weird that I feel like it's weirdly wholesome, especially by the end of the movie, spoilers, but like, it's this weirdly like, that is you just dropped a high school boy into a girl's body.
I've never felt these before. I can't stop feeling them. And it's not super perverted and it doesn't feel dirty. It just feels like a person who's never had these body parts before wanting to explore them. Honestly, as someone who has worked in pre-K, the way children do.
Yeah. It's so strangely wholesome.
Yeah.
I can't even think of another word for it. It's just like the bodies and how do they work.
But then, of course, Mitsuha's a little bit more self-aware, I think, than he is. So she will, like, touch but won't look at his private areas.
Oh, no. Every single time she has to go to the bathroom as Taki is my favorite. Because she just leaves the bathroom utterly embarrassed and, like, doesn't know what to do with herself.
I've seen this thing I really shouldn't be seeing.
I definitely appreciate that she also knows that he's been touching her boobs and calls him on it later when they can finally talk in person.
Pervert! Like, yes, it's that instant, like, positive to negative. Like, the first thing that happens is like, I can't believe I finally get to see you. I can't believe you touched my boobs.
I only did that like once, not according to my sister.
I mean, but speaking of weirdly wholesome, when they decide to set down ground rules and start leaving each other little notes about what they did in each other's lives so they can keep track of their days.
Oh, yes. And I'm sure at this point in the movie, when I sent you the note where I was like, why don't they just text each other? I'm sure you were going like, I can't tell you why. Because this is where we get into this weird time jump of like,
yes.
The conceit of the movie happens super early on, first of all. We're like 55 minutes into this hour and 45-minute movie. They drop this bomb that they've actually been communicating and inhabiting each other's bodies across 3 years.
So Mitsuha lives 3 years prior to Taki.
Yes. Yeah. And that all of a sudden made so much sense because it was just like, well, you can't just text someone. So I'm sure that's probably one of the first things they tried. And then they were like, that's weird. I don't know why it didn't go through. Fine, I'll just leave it on your diary. You know, like, it's just...
That big reveal is done so well. And it's interesting because, like, I wasn't expecting that walking in. I wasn't expecting her to... Spoiler. I have hoped that you've paused this podcast episode and watched this movie. If you haven't, this is your absolute last chance. When it's eventually dropped that she had lived 3 years prior, she is also dead.
Yeah.
She is also dead.
Yeah. One of the things I found while I was doing, look, I did very little research on this movie because personally I just kind of wanted to watch it again. I was just like, I don't actually need to know how the sausage is made on this one. This is fine. But like one of the very sort of quick snippets I found while I was looking around was, like one of those Google like fill-in answers. One of the questions was, is this movie happy? And they were like, no, it is a sad movie. However, it has funny moments and has a happy ending.
Yes.
But it is very sad.
It's kind of like a pop song that you bop to in the car and you're like, this is awesome. I love it. I can dance to this. And then when you listen to the words, you realize it's about this gut-wrenching death of a friend.
There's a TikTok trend right now that is up against like the most red flaggy song I've heard in so long, and it's basically just the boppiest thing you will listen to, and you will like want to dance in your living room, and who gives a crap what they see, and then it's just like, oh man, but it is don't date this person.
Yeah, surprise! It's about an abusive relationship. You know,
nobody should date this person. Never.
So anyway, yeah, this movie is absolutely that because of the animation, because of the like the boob moments and things that are funny, and because
like
of the
little
music,
sister and the families and the friends and the.
Oh, I love the friends. But wait, we can't get too off. Wait, I was going to say, I feel like. The reason that drop was part of the reason that drop is so good is because, and then later on, of course, I was reading about the movie and there were the people who watched the movie for the first time, saw the reveal, loved the movie, and then went back and watched it frame by frame and picked up on all of these little things that like on your second or third viewing, you'll think, wait, why didn't I put two and two together? I can't believe it. Like some of them are super subtle. Like a calendar that you'll see in both locations. One of the calendars says 2013 and one of the calendars says 2016. And unless you are very eagle-eyed, I feel like that is not the sort of thing you would see on your first viewing. No. But when Taki is on his date with Miss Okudera and they go to the Tokyo Sky Tree, remember? And they go to this little exhibit that's called Nostalgia and he sees the lake in the exhibit. You know,
right.
So it's one of those. And, you know, my brain just kind of went, oh, you know, it's nostalgia as in someone went on a vacation there and they really liked it and they remember the vacation fondly, not that lake and that town no longer exists.
Right.
You know, so I guess there were little things that kind of, and people have brought up things like, oh, you can tell looking at their phones. Like, obviously, his phone is so much more modern than hers. But again, the movie was clever because they put her in Inomori and they put him in Tokyo. So watching it, you're like, oh, well, it's because she's a country girl. She has a phone that's not all the way up to date. Whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
She doesn't need the latest apps.
Yeah. Yeah.
For her. Yeah,
to weave cords with her grandmother. She doesn't need the latest iPhone to do that.
Although one of my favorite things is in the middle of one of those very quick montages is Taki getting frustrated with the cords.
Yes, me too.
It's so fast. Like you blink and you miss it.
It's also, you notice, and it's funny because, like, of course the grandmother picked up on what was happening. Of course the grandmother did. Because in that moment where he's getting frustrated with the cords, he's also not in his kimono. Because he probably doesn't even know how to put one on. Because he can't even pull his hair back appropriately. You know? So
yeah. No,
he's just 100%. Like in his school uniform.
As someone who has never personally put herself into a kimono, but who has had help from friends to get herself into a kimono, I don't even think I could do it if I was left to my own devices. And I know the steps to make it happen. But like, I'm also sitting there just going like, no, that's difficult.
Yeah, super. And so he's in her school uniform during that scene. Whereas when you see Mitsuha weaving the braided cords with her grandmother when they first show up, they're fully in their traditional wear. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I love here is where I drop my like queer conspiracy theories.
Okay, do it. We're going to talk about it.
Every time there's a body swap anything, I always sort of imagine the queer undertones of like living as someone else's life, right? Like whenever it's boy girl body swap, I'm just like, but this is the gayest thing I've ever seen. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way.
Absolutely not.
Someone somewhere knows.
Okay, but to bring it all back though, and I do think this isn't coming out of nowhere. Because of Mitsuha's wish, which we were talking about pre-pod, and you should discuss because I got the wish.
So, well,
I misunderstood
we've already talked. No, yeah. Well, I mean, unless you didn't, like, unless it's, but like, you already talked about Taki, you know, doing this thing where it's just like, Taki will just flirt with anybody, adds Mitsuha. And I'm just like, that's amazing. Like, so we've already got a bi and or pansexual as a woman, specifically, because Taki and Taki's body does not do this. So like, we've already got some rainbow stuff happening there.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because Taki and Taki's body is very quiet. So it's like he was finally able to blossom when he was in Mitsuha's body.
Exactly. And we get the exact same thing when Mitsuha's in Taki's body. Where, you know, Mitsuha, actually, before we even see that, quote unquote, even though she's done it before, she thought it was a dream. She has this wish she's very frustrated with a bunch of high schoolers making fun of her traditional ways, which I'm just like, you're in a small town. Why aren't you, like, nicer to each other?
I mean,
you are probably going to see these people for the rest of your life.
I grew up in a very small community. The mean kids are everywhere. It's unfortunate. Anyway, these girls see her going through that ritual with her sister and then make fun of her for it.
And they make fun of her for it. And she gets very frustrated because all she wants to be is a boy in Tokyo.
So the subtitles literally, she's screaming this wish out into the world. And what she literally says is, make me a cute boy in Tokyo.
Yes.
And then it's Taki time. You know, the next scene, it's Taki's body waking up in bed, but it's Mitsuha who's in Taki's body. And I think that is the first time that she has been in Taki's body. At least,
do you think she was just like
in the movie,
asleep in her own body?
At least in the movie, because prior to that, the body swap that the first body swap we see is Mitsuha waking up, but it's Taki in her body. And then we see Mitsuha at her school and all of her friends are saying like, oh, you were so weird yesterday. And she sees this note inside of her notebook and it says, who are you? Right? That's when then we learn about Inamori's history, we learn about the braided cords, we get the grandmother scene, and then we get Mitsuha making her wish, and then she wakes up in Taki's body. So
now,
I don't
see, her acting weird the day before made me think she was Taki.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. She was Taki today. Well, Taki was in her body.
But we didn't see that.
But we don't know, like, do they swap every time? Or,
this is
you
a
know
question.
what I'm saying?
Or does one of them,
The movie
like...
doesn't establish that very well.
I mean, timey-wimey,
wibbly-wobbly.
Timey-wimey.
This isn't back to timey-wimey. Anyway, make me a cute boy in Tokyo is her wish.
Yeah. Which could be, and I also appreciate your interpretation of that, which was like, she is literally, because she's underneath a Shinto shrine, and she's literally asking the gods to physically make her a boy.
That's
like,
what
make
I thought
her
she
a
was
boy
asking.
outside of her body to date.
Yeah. Yes, like, make me, as from clay, a boy in Tokyo. I think that perhaps my interpretation is the wrong one, because a very quick Google search has the rest of the world interpreting it as, I want to be a boy in Tokyo. Of course, neither of us are native Japanese speakers, so maybe if we listened to the actual Japanese, like, make me a would be a little bit less.
Maybe.
A little bit less, what's the word I'm looking for?
Literal?
Subjective.
Ah. I mean, yes. Also,
Yeah.
yes. The fact that the end of that sentence is in my next life also, I think is important to note.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. So I think you're right. And I do think that is kind of the classic body swap, right? Like, there are two characters and one of them says, I want to be you. And the other one says, well, I want to be you. And they swap. They become each other. Like, they switch because of some kind of wish that each other person had. Although I don't know that, I think that this was Mitsuha's wish and Mitsuha's doing and not really Taki's. I think he's just along for the ride. As established, everything about Taki is actually about Mitsuha.
Poor Taki. I feel like Taki needed way more, like, character development and just, I don't know. I feel like he's just kind of there.
I hear you, and I will never be upset about the movie where the female protagonist is the protagonist and the male is the love interest, or the one trailing after her, as it were, in this movie.
I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Because the writer has said that the writer whose name I am...
Shinkai?
Yes. Is an animator, but he didn't personally oversee every single little bit of the animation in this movie. He left quite a bit of it up to his team because he was working as the screenwriter for this movie, not as much in the animation sense. And so that comes across in, like, cute little ways where sometimes the animators snuck in funny little Easter eggs that they didn't even really ask him about. So the name of the restaurant that Taki works in is actually the name of a movie that that the screenwriter had created prior to this one. And the animators just put that in kind of without him asking or without asking him previously. The reason I bring that up is there are little parts of the movie, though, where he specifically asked that there be two birds kind of flying in the background and that one bird be chasing the other.
I mean,
because that is Taki in this movie.
that is literally Taki in this movie. Well, so okay, wait. To get back to the other queer moment that I interpreted as queer is she sets up this date while she is Taki. She starts, like, at first you interpret it as, like, accidentally flirting with this woman he works with.
Oh, yeah. Because, or, like, being very caring toward her in a way that socially it's acceptable for women to be caring towards each other.
But if a dude approached you and said, I would like to stitch up your skirt that just got cut, please take it off and let me have it. Yeah. She's just like, what are you doing?
And that is how she reacts at first. That cute little hedgehog embroidery pattern, so cute.
I know.
Anyway.
It's so cute. I actually think whatever the fight was that Taki got into must have been his catalyst moment. I think he had a catalyst moment. I don't think he necessarily knew what he was wishing for. But I think that's, you know, that bandage is also the, like, he's in the city and he said something he shouldn't have to the wrong person and he got smacked for it. Like, I can't see it as anything else.
You're right. That's fact number 4 about Taki. I only listed 3 prior. Fact number 4 is Taki has a temper. Now, wait, the note that Mitsuha leaves for Taki after that first interaction with Miss Okudera is that don't forget, tomorrow you have a date with Miss Okudera. Or no, I walked her to the station. That's what she says. Tonight I walked Miss Okudera to the station thanks to my feminine powers. And then, Joy, continue, because we're not at the queer moment yet.
I know. So what happens is I think Mitsuha as Taki cultivates this one specific relationship.
Yes.
Because it's not like she goes around to everybody like Taki does in her body. She cultivates this specific relationship, and she, like, figures out and plans a date for them. And then she leaves a note for Taki just in case she ends up not in the body. And when she doesn't end up in Taki's body for this date, she's just like, I was really looking forward to that.
It's so well done, though, because what we, the audience, are seeing is the date with Taki and Miss Okudera. And we can tell that it's Taki and Taki's body because he's wearing the ribbon bracelet. And Mitsuha never wears that bracelet. Only Taki wears that bracelet because only Taki understands its significance. And anyway, so we see the date and we hear Mitsuha's note as a voiceover.
Yes.
So you literally hear her saying, I wish it was me who was on that date with Miss Okudera, but if it's you, I hope you have fun together.
It's so funny to me because there's a moment I had watching this where I was like, I don't ship them. I just don't. Like, there's
Taki and Mitsuha or Taki and Miss Okudera?
No, Taki and Mitsuha.
Oh, Taki and Mitsuha. Mm-hmm.
And, like, that's what the date is actually significant of, is, like, after that date, Miss Okudera is like, oh, you like someone else. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of implied that, like, Taki has this crush on Mitsuha, which I'm like, first of all, you've never met.
But they've communicated for months with the notes and the diary entries. They've laid down rules. And writing on each other's hands. I mean, what else is relationship other than communication and ground rules?
And compromises. Communication and ground rules. Relationship 101.
Okay, anyway, sorry. So you weren't shipping them.
I wasn't shipping them necessarily. It's not that, like, spoilers, but, like, eventually they do actually meet in person because they change time. Mm-hmm. That's a thing that they did, which I'm still geeking out about, like, forever, that they actually changed the timeline. But, you know, I think it's like what we were talking about in one of the Fringe episodes where we were like, I don't want to ship this, you know, with, like, the parent relationship, where it was just like, what if you just shared something that neither of you can actually speak about and it's too intense to actually name, but, like, you know, the two of you are connected in some way. And it's like this shared experience that only they had. Yeah. I mean, if you don't count the rest of Mitsuha's family, which, by the way, what is in that shrine water?
I was like, there's well,
and it's passed down through the mother too, where I'm just like, okay.
Yeah. I think that this is also because of what we've already discussed and kind of the way the characters are developed in the show. Because for Mitsuha, there are so many things that are more important in life than this one boy. But for Taki's entire life is Mitsuha and finding Mitsuha and meeting Mitsuha, you know? And so I think the maybe one reason you didn't necessarily see it or ship them or see it as a relationship is because, honestly, for 60% of the movie, it's really one-sided. It's Taki who's chasing her.
So one-sided.
And she's just living her life. She's going to Tokyo. She's going on dates with Miss Okudera. She's going to the Sky Tree. She's eating whatever she wants at that bakery, spending all of his money, taking all the pictures. I love that she's...
I love my favorite thing. One of my favorite things about this movie is the cafe.
The cafe.
Like the cafe running joke in the very beginning of the movie of like, let's go to the cafe. And the two of them are like, the cafe? Yeah, let's go. And it's like, you knew there wasn't a cafe here. This town is too small. I don't know what you expected.
Taki builds the little bench and table area so that it does become kind of a cafe. See, so cute. Anyway, he's obsessed. And she's just a whole round human living her life. I think that
yes.
I think that the first time we do see her care for him in that way is when it is finally revealed that she went to Tokyo to see him. Yeah. And we understand what was happening in the very first scene of this movie, by the way, where she sees him at the train and tosses him her ribbon and tells him her name. I think that's when we first see her kind of, quote, falling for him or having any kind of romantic feelings toward him.
I think
her trip to Tokyo.
Her trip to Tokyo. Well, in timeline A,
yeah,
that is technically the first time they interact.
Right. And we see her, but, we hear her thoughts on the train. And as she's on the train, she's thinking about like, oh, I really want to meet him. I wonder what he's going to be like. Is he going to like me because I like him? Like, all those little typical things. And then, like, oh, actually, she does like this guy. It's just that she has a lot of other stuff going on, too. Yeah, right.
She's just a well-rounded character.
She's just a well-rounded character.
But, like, and I also love that they both have friends that are both very helpful, but also not helpful at all. Like, they both have the best friend that is, like, super supportive, but also kind of weird about it.
They each have these very supportive, but also kind of clueless friends. Mitsuha has Tessie and Sayaka, the OTP, the second OTP in the movie.
The second OTP. Can I tell you, when we met the older couple while Taki and Miss Okudera and
Tsukasa.
Oh, no, you just said his name. Yeah, Tsukasa were, touring around the countryside. Mm-hmm. When they meet that, like, older couple that owns the small restaurant, I could have sworn that was going to be Tessie.
Oh, that would have been so good. Except, of course, it's only a 3-year gap. If it were like a 10-year gap. I mean,
she had a cell phone. Like, she had a cell phone.
It was only a 3-year gap. Oh, my gosh. That train trip, Joy, if one day I could take that train trip. When the snacks, the bentos, that, like, Tsukasa and Miss Okudera taking photos of the cute mascot at that specific small town train station. I know. That is just the train ride from my dreams.
Yes.
But anyway, they do go on this little trip to try and find Inamori.
Yes. And even though Taki's friends are just like, this is a terrible tour. And it's like, it wasn't supposed to be a tour. I came here to do something important. How dare you?
Along for the ride. They're like, we can't let you meet this online friend you've never met before on your own. We're coming with you. Now,
I think it's an online friend.
An online friend. I think that Tessie was definitely more helpful in the general scheme of things than Tsukasa and Miss Okudera. Because at least, he puts the explosives together. He's the one he's able to break into the power plants because his dad
has the wire cutters.
His dad is a contractor, so that's why he's kind of her in.
No, 100%.
But again,
that's
Mitsuha knows how to pick good friends. So
yes.
I'm gonna bring this all back to Mitsuha being the superior protagonist in this film.
The best. The literal best. It's not a competition, but she's literally the best. But she would win. It's not a competition, but she would win.
So, anyway, Taki's whole journey with Tsukasa and Miss Okudera is about finding Inamori and finding Mitsuha. And Mitsuha's entire journey on her own is about saving her town. And in between of those two things, we get that beautiful Twilight scene.
Yes, Twilight was a big theme in this movie. Mm-hmm. And the idea that something can be day and night at the same time, that, you know, that like, you know, the living world and the underworld can be in the same place at the same time. And I also love the like the valley where it's like, and then if you cross the stream, you will be in the underworld. And the little girl just runs right across the stream so fast. She's so happy. Cute. No, yes. So the Twilight scene actually happens because the biggest possible spoilers on the planet, Taki ends up wishing so hard, I guess, that he ends up back in Mitsuha's body to try and save the town.
Oh.
And so by the time he realizes what's happened, as Mitsuha, he's like, wait a minute, I actually wonder if I'm still in that sacred place because I fell and I hit my head. Maybe I'm still there. And like races back to this place. And just as Twilight hits, the two of them are there, can see each other, can touch each other, and can have a conversation. And it's like the first time they actually meet. Well, the first time. Quote unquote, first time.
Quotes unquotes. But yes. Oh, it's just such a beautiful scene. Yeah. This is one of those moments where I guess I could describe the scene to you play by play, listeners, or you could watch it.
Yeah, you could also press pause. You could just watch that scene again and then come back.
Then rewinds and watch the scene again because everything about it is perfect.
And I also I really enjoy the and this is like that time travel stuff that I really enjoy from the sci-fi angle of like time begins to shift just before this moment, because when Taki is looking for the messages, they're suddenly all gone while he's on the high school field.
Yes.
So as Twilight ends, they start to forget the other person.
Yeah, this is where
it happens to Taki first.
This is where I think I'm a little unclear on the timeline of the movie, and perhaps some clever viewer has already literally drawn the timeline.
Right.
But the way that my brain interpreted that is, you know, kind of like how you see the comet kind of splitting apart and forming that smaller comet, or like how the grandmother describes it, the threads and the braided cords can like separate and come back together and separate and come back together. And I think that the moment earlier in the movie where Taki, after Taki's date with Miss Okudera, when he finally tries to call her and isn't able to get through, and then he says, and that's the last time that we ever switched bodies.
Right.
And right before that, it's because, you know, she's standing on the field about to partake in this autumn festival. It was an autumn festival, right? And she's watching the comet fall, and we know that that's her moment of death, right? So that's kind of where their timelines come apart. And that's why they no longer are able to remember each other unless they are in each other's bodies.
Well, Taki remembers.
For a little bit.
Yeah, well, Taki remembers for, I would have to go back and see what the timeline said, but Taki remembered for like a whole month. That's why he travels there. That's why he tries to find her. And he realizes she's dead, and then he remembers one of the dreams he had where he went to that sacred place. So he tells Miss Okudera and his friend to go back to Tokyo. It's like, I just have one more thing to look at, but like I need to do it myself. So you guys go home. I'm going to go to this place. He goes there, he drinks the sake, and then trips over himself.
Yes.
Bless. And hits his head. And for the briefest of moment, I was like, and now you're dead too. And now the two of you can just be dead together. But there's still like 45 minutes. What's happening?
There's 45 minutes. It's not that kind of movie.
It's not that kind of movie. Well, so like in Taki's body's timeline, this happens. And then he basically only remembers her for like one more day, like in his brain space. For Mitsuha, like because he hit his head and he's like Mitsuha's entire life flashed before his eyes, he realizes several things in very quick succession. But then he ends up in Mitsuha's body the day after she came looking for him in Tokyo. and that is exactly where he as her changes the timeline, because he's like, the comet's gonna fall, it's gonna kill everybody, I'm in 2013, I can save people. And like she isn't acting sad, which is I think what Tessie said, where it was like, well, I called her and I don't know, she seemed sad, I think it was over a boy, before they went to the festival, and then all of a sudden she cut her hair, know, and it was just like, why do men always think when women cut their hair, it's over a boy?
Although, to be clear, it was Mitsuha who cut Mitsuha's hair.
It was.
Yeah. Taki did not cut Mitsuha's hair. That would not be cool.
That would not be cool.
It's just when Taki wakes up in her body, he has the short hair.
He has the short hair. Mitsuha literally did that night, I'm assuming, when she got back from Tokyo, and she was like, well, I guess that's it. And then she cut her hair. It was actually over a boy, which is a little bit sad. But real quick, this is like the third queer thing where I was like, but now she has short hair like Taki. Now she has boy length hair. Like, it's literally Taki's haircut that she has on her head.
What?
Like, it's almost exactly the same.
Taki has like hedgehog hair. Taki has like spiky hedgehog hair.
He has spiky hedgehog hair, but he has enough that she can like tug on it.
I have, by the way, specifically mentioned the hedgehog because of her obsession with hedgehogs.
I know.
And so there is actually like some fan art that has, her because she loves hedgehogs and he has his hedgehog hair. She's like gently caressing his hedgehog hair, and I think it's really funny. Sorry, that was so hot.
Really cute. Oh no. Oh no, it's so cute.
Well,
Most
anyway,
precious.
I do love that you're right, he's in 2013 in her body, and he's like, this is my chance. I can do it. I can save people. And he isn't able to do it. He cannot. And so what he decides to do is go and find her. Oh, you're right. Because he's like, if I'm inhabiting her body, she must be inhabiting mine. And I know that I am at the shrine. So that's when he
Which is hilarious, by the way, because he's not at the shrine. He's at the shrine 3 years later. And I'm just like,
timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly. But anyway, so that's when he bikes as fast as he can to the shrine. At first, they can only hear each other's voices because it's not twilight yet, and then twilight hits. And all of a sudden, we're in the time of the day when two different worlds can exist, and that's where they see each other, and it's beautiful. And then they go to, and we have to talk about this, write each other's names on each other's hands. Because, and this all comes back to, they cannot remember each other anymore. For whatever reason, they cannot remember each other anymore. So they go, let's write each other's names on each other's hands. And she's like, great. He writes on her hand first.
What we think is his name on her hand.
He writes on her hand first. She picks up the pen, does precisely one stroke on his hand, and then that moment where all of a sudden you snap and twilight is over and the pen drops. And my heart was just like,
I know. It happened to me too.
No. And then they both do the thing where they're trying to say to each other, okay, her name was Mitsuha, or like, his name was Taki, I'm going to remember, but they both forget, even though they're saying it out loud to each other, or to themselves. And then it turns out that he has written in her hand, I love you. And her reaction, when she's like, that idiot.
Not helpful.
Just not.
No, her reaction to that is so amazing. It's one of my favorite things in the whole movie is just her being just like, this is not helpful.
Like,
what did you do?
Sobbing into her hand because it is so romantic, but also so supremely unhelpful. Now, I didn't know this when I was watching the movie, and I honestly have mixed feelings about this, which is, again, people who loved the movie then went back and watched it shot for shot, and specifically people who know how to speak and write in Japanese were looking at the way the characters were, the characters in the show were writing on each other's hands, and they noticed that when Mitsuha goes to write on Taki's hand, what she's able to do before that snap of twilight ending is draw a single horizontal line. However, if you, earlier in the movie, when Mitsuha writes her name on Taki's hand as an answer, because, you know, he wrote on her hand, who are you? So she writes back her name on his hand. The first stroke is like a little circle, like a little loop that actually goes downward, not to the right. So a lot of people were saying, well, since her first stroke was horizontal, she wasn't going to write her name either, unless for some reason she decided to write in kanji or something else instead of writing in the characters that she typically uses. But that would be strange. Yeah, it would be strange for her to shift if she's written her name in his hand differently prior, you know?
I mean, it's also a strange thing to do when it's like, if you're not writing your hand, like if you're not writing your name, it's a completely different word.
Yeah, so wait, let me take it one step further. So they were like, well, she wasn't writing her name because her name starts with a downward stroke into a loop. However, the character that you would write first if you wanted to write I love you starts with a horizontal stroke. So the fan theory is that she was also going to write I love you in his hands, which is very cute. And the romantic in me loves, but it also takes away, I think, from the frustration of the moment where she looks at his hands and is so angry at him for being unhelpful, because then I'm like, girl, you did the same thing.
I mean,
or did you?
I think you can also appreciate it because she literally doesn't remember him and she doesn't remember what she was just doing. Like, she only remembers at the last second to look at her hand. Like, she wouldn't have remembered that she was supposed to write I love you because she doesn't remember what she was doing. Now I'm a little sad that they both couldn't be like... Because there are so many moments in this movie where they say the exact same thing at the same time.
Yes!
And I'm just like, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. That the two of you would have both done this stupid, dumb, romantic thing. Now, the reason I love that they forget each other, even though it is super sad in the moment and it is highly, highly effective.
Very dramatic.
Very traumatic. It helped me realize what was happening because the more that stuff happened, the more I realized they were actually legitimately changing history. Because then what happens is there isn't this natural disaster that wipes out 500 people in a town. Most of the people in the town were able to get out to higher ground and get away from ground zero. So they weren't even home at the time. And instead, we just had a bunch of injuries and no one died. Like, no one.
No one. Mitsuha was able to, Mitsuha in Mitsuha's body, and I love that it was her who actually got to do it, convinced her dad to, who's running for mayor or is mayor? He's a mayor incumbent. Mayor. Yeah, he is and is again
He's
running.
Also a trash human being.
Yeah, you know. Well, we don't have time to discuss that, Joy.
I know, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
I'm like, he's dealing with a lot of personal issues that we don't have time to delve into because we've talked about the romance and the timey-wimey for way too long.
I know.
But anyway,
I love that it's Mitsuha that actually is the one to like convince the mayor that like, no, really, you need to evacuate the town like right now.
And then she saves everyone. Yeah.
And she saves everyone. And I love that becomes the timeline. Because he like later Taki is like, I don't know. I remember we like all went to the countryside, but I don't remember why we were there.
Yeah. And it's so funny because for 5 years for him and 8 years for her, or wait, is it the other way? Yeah. 8 years for her, 5 years for him because she's 3 years behind. That makes sense. Anyway, for that amount of time, because they've forgotten each other, they just live their lives.
I know.
They just live their lives. They grow up and they get jobs and become full-on adults. And Taki doesn't remember that he was supposed to be looking for her, to the point where they have this little scene where he's eating in a cafe and Tessie and Sayaka are right behind him. And he doesn't even remember, he doesn't recognize them.
Not at all. Well, he turns around like he should know who they are. Yeah. But like, he can't place them. He can't say anything. And by the time he thinks to do anything about it, they're already gone.
Yes. At which point, all of a sudden, we're back at the beginning of the movie.
Yes.
Where they're both searching for something and they don't know what that something is. But then the running theory is that the red cord of fate connects them, right? And that they are always, they're going to recognize each other when they finally do see each other, which eventually happens as they're on passing trains. And then they chase each other down.
Scene. And then they chase each other down. And like, you know, obviously they were getting off at different stops and like had to run down certain streets and like and then they even see each other and it's like, I don't actually know if you're the person I'm looking for. Never mind. And like they walk up and down the stairs, like just passing each other. And I would have died inside personally had they had one of them not stopped and been like, wait, hey. Don't I know you?
And of course it was Taki who did that.
I know. Of course it was. Obsessed.
In keeping with the rest of the movie, yes.
You obsessed little boy.
Pass each other on that staircase. You're right. If like literally the last minute and a half of the movie had been cut, it would have been so devastating.
Sad beyond belief.
I would, beyond measure. I would have been really upset.
Yeah. I don't know what I would have done with myself, but it would have been very sad. It would have been a very sad time.
Taki goes, hey, haven't we met? And she goes, I thought we had. And then the movie ends with them simultaneously asking each other what their names are.
I love this movie. I really enjoyed this movie. Thank you for showing me this movie.
Now we can watch it, add it to the list of movies we watch over and over and over again.
Movies.
You can just stare at it. You can just listen to the soundtrack. I mean, that soundtrack is just...
The movie also reads to me like a bunch of episodes of a thing. Because I know there's like a book or a novelization or something. But basically everything that was in the book is in the movie. But it is segmented out. Like you could probably watch it in you know, like in 30-minute increments and get the story. Which I really appreciated also. Because like there's like 10 acts to this thing.
Right. My brain automatically divided it into 3, but you're right. Probably you could do more than 3.
You could probably do more than 3. It's like
Act 1, body swap. Act 2, the reveal.
Yeah.
Taki goes on a hunt.
Taki goes on a hunt.
That's and then Act 4, Mitsuha saves her town. And then
she does the thing.
Act 5 is the epilogue where they go their separate ways, they're living their lives, and then they find each other. You're right. It's at least 5.
100%. It's at least 5. Minimum of 5. But yeah, I think that just about does it. I feel like do we have one more thing?
I have two more one more things maybe. Both of them are little tidbits that I picked up from the internet and are not coming from me. And the first is one detail that I loved about the ribbon, which is, you know what, I'll just make this my one more thing because this one's better. Okay. It's a detail about the ribbon, which is that when you see the ribbon in the movie, it looks like it's red all the way through. It is not actually red all the way through. There's a little bit of the ribbon that goes from red to orange to white to blue and then back again. So Twilight is in the ribbon.
Oh, I love that. Right? It's so sappy and beautiful.
It's so sappy and beautiful. My heart. I'm just like, oh.
What did you say? What did you say this genre of movie was like romantic?
The way that I describe this genre of movie, I can't actually say without getting swear charged. So it's romantic stuff that makes me cry, but the word I use is not stuff.
behind the curtain. I wonder if I have one more thing. I think my one more thing is Japan has different dialects across the country. And I think we don't really know that as a Western society, even though we have our own dialects in our own massive country. You know, like somebody in the backwoods of Louisiana talks a certain way. And, you know, there's like country and then there's female, male ways of speaking. So, fun fact, my dad was fluent in Japanese. But the thing is he was fluent in street Japanese. And so for the longest time, some of his friends used to make fun of him by saying he sounds like an old Southern woman because of the way he spoke. And I was like, I mean, that tracks, though.
Yes. Wait.
I feel like that tracks.
It absolutely tracks. And that comes up in this movie. That's why you brought that up, right?
And exactly why I brought that up, because I love that, like, you body swapped with a country girl and all of a sudden it's just like, you have a dialect, you have an accent, you need to shut that down. It's like if someone in New York all of a sudden body swapped with someone in Florida, well, Florida, in Georgia, and it was just like, where's your accent, bud? And it's just like, oh, yeehaw, I guess, you know?
You're so right. His friends' faces when they're sitting on the school rooftop and he uses the wrong word to refer to himself as I. And they're like, huh? Yes. And he goes, this word? And they're like, no. And he goes, this word? And they're like, yeah.
Yeah. Like relearning how to words was one of my favorite things in this movie.
That is an excellent one more thing. Such a great cultural touch and a beautiful moment in this beautiful movie that everyone should watch.
Everyone should watch. Go out and watch it right now. I rented it on Prime. It was not expensive, and you can have it for 7 days. Or you can buy it, also not expensive, and have it for the rest of your life.
Yep. And then watch it over and over again.
Over and over again.
Okay. Anyway, we have to end this podcast episode. Otherwise, we're just going to sit here gushing about it.
I know.
1, 2, 3, go. We're ending the podcast episode. Okay, listeners, we would love to hear from you. Please check us out at Bitch O'Clock Pod on Twitter and Facebook, where you can tell us about a sacred place you have visited. You can also email us at bingeoclockpod@gmail.com. Don't forget, we have a Patreon. Find us at patreon.com/clockpod.
That's right. And tell your friends, tell your family, tell your loved ones, tell the live lobsters in your life about Binge O'Clock, and we will see you next time.